Greetings and welcome back, folks, to another one of our talks. First of all, just a reminder, if you want to be in with a chance of getting some freebies, some goodies, I think we all appreciate something for free. Be sure to like the sessions, rate them, and also make sure you interact with the comments, and also make sure you have questions at the end of these sessions. That'll give you a chance of winning some ebooks courtesy of our sponsorship with Packet Company. But I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm sure we've got a lot to get through. We're joined by Joao. I am looking forward to this one. He's here to talk to us about inspirations from Meta and his experiences around that product. Joao, take it away.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm here to tell you, first of all, I want to start by saying that today, the day that we're living today, is the fastest day that we have lived our entire lives. Now, the same day is also the slowest day that we will experience for the rest of our lives. So stop and think about that for a second. So what that means is change is only getting faster. Product life cycles are only getting shorter. The need for adaptation and change is getting greater every single day. So that is the reality that we're living in today. That poses a lot of challenges for individuals in terms of resilience and adaptation, and it poses significant challenges for organizations, right, which need to adapt to this new reality with much greater change, much greater speed. So in that context is how I'm going to talk to you today, and I'm going to share 5 insights that every organization and every leader needs to have in mind as they approach the inevitable required digital transformation. I'm calling it digital transformation. You could call it transformation because every organization needs to transform and to be able to transform on an ongoing basis. And so I'll start by just sharing my personal journey. My personal professional journey has been one of a digital transformation individually. The last 30 years, I've been working in large multinational companies. I started at companies like Procter & Gamble, BCG, doing strategy consulting, Avery Dennison, and B2B, Liberty Global, telecommunications, all by definition traditional, non-digital, because that was the time then. It didn't exist yet. And then I led a transformation of, I'm sure you've heard or seen in movies, Yellow Pages, a Yellow Pages company in South America, in several countries around the region, where obviously that business model was dying very quickly. The business model of the book where you went to find telephone numbers for small businesses, it was dying because Google search was taken over and other online platforms were taken over. And the company needed to transform digitally, needed to transform itself into an SMB digital marketing agency in a way for SMBs that didn't have those marketing departments and quite frankly were in a bit of a panic to say, how do we find clients now that this book is dying and people are online? So many companies have not been able to make that transformation. Today, I'm really proud to say that this company continues to thrive and help thousands, hundreds of thousands of small and medium-sized companies find their clients through Google AdWords and Facebook ads and other digital platforms. So that was a very profound digital transformation from an ex-monopoly to an active, dynamic digital competitor. And for the past 6 years, I was at Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, leading the South America region for them. And what's interesting about that experience is you would imagine, well, you went kind of from the dinosaurs of Yellow Pages to the space age of digital social networks. But what's really interesting is that the cultural foundation that you need to be successful in an ever-changing landscape is true in any company. So yes, Facebook is a digital native, was born in the digital. It needs to be agile and resilient and change with the new dynamics. And this gets us to a cultural conversation. Many of you may have heard Peter Drucker's famous phrase, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." What this means is you can have, and I worked at BCG, great strategy company. You could have a wonderful strategy, all the right products, all the right go-to-market strategies, all the right organizational structure, But if the culture is not aligned to serve that strategy, it will not happen. The culture will win because the culture is the invisible force that drives what the organization will do. And there's a beautiful analogy that that Axialent uses. Axialent is a consultancy that I do a lot of work with. And the analogy is, if you think about an iceberg is a large block of ice. About 10% of it is visible. Majority of it, 90%, is underwater. But if you think about culture in an organization, you have the visible level, which is what you have, what you present, what you have in the annual report, the revenue, the market share, the profitability. If you go underwater, it's a little less visible. You have the do level. What does the company do to achieve those results? How do they communicate? How do they coordinate? Are they agile? Do they execute well? But then when you go really deep, where it's much more hidden and much less tangible, you have the B level. The B level is the mental models, the values and beliefs, the mindsets that reside in the DNA of the company. And if you think about what's more visible, obviously the results, but what has more leverage, it's the stuff down here. It's the B, it's the culture level. And this is, you could also think about a spectrum where the higher level is what the strategy talks about, and the lower level is what the culture is all about. And the leverage means that if you're able to move these mindsets and these mental models by 1 inch, then the results have a disproportionate positive effect. So it starts down here. Why do 80% of digital transformation projects fail? Because they stay at the top 2 levels. They talk about systems and processes. Maybe they go a little bit into execution and how do we coordinate, but they don't go to the cultural level. And back to my digital transformation of Yellow Pages, that was the reason the company today is alive, is that we went to that bottom level. You can't continue having mental models of an ex-monopoly in a digital, agile, competitive landscape. Another great phrase is, what you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. So any of you who have children know this all too well. You can say something, you have to do something, you have to do this. This is my instruction to you. But then if you do something different, that is the instruction your children will hear. And it's the same thing in an organizational culture. If leaders say one thing and do something else, that is what the culture is hearing. So that these are all different ways to express why culture is much stronger than strategy. Culture is what will mandate what your organization will be able to achieve. So let's move to the 5 insights, having set that context of why culture is the way into any type of transformation, and especially digital transformation, because it requires so much agility. I'm going to share 5 insights inspired from my entire experience, but more recently from my experience at Meta. And the 5 are: build a horizontal organization, be part of the problem, have a hard conversation, hold your convictions lightly, and believe in something. And we're going to start with building a horizontal organization. And for each of these, I'm going to share an example from the reality at Meta, and then I'm going to explain why that is a valuable insight. So at Facebook, at Meta now, every week, Mark Zuckerberg, that everyone calls him Zuck in Meta, has a Q&A session, questions and answers, with every employee around the world. So the people who are in Menlo Park in San Francisco will join this large room. Everyone who's outside will join via Zoom. And every single employee will be able to ask him a question. So he'll share some thoughts, and then everyone will ask him a question. So the message this sends is, everyone has a voice, and I want to hear everyone's voice. Of course, you can't hear 100,000 questions, but if you do this often enough, you send a message of psychological safety. You send a message of your voice is not only important, we encourage you to speak up. So that's a very, very powerful symbol that I have not seen at any company, even smaller ones. And this one, he continues to do that every single week. Unless he's sick in bed, he will do this. And then the other example at Meta, in my leadership team, roughly 15 people, you have their color code that shows the seniority level of the team, between high, medium, and low, in terms of years of experience, in terms of direct reports. So you have, on my leadership team, I would have some people with 20 years of experience with very large groups of people managing large teams. And then I would have very junior people with no direct reports, with individual contributors. And that was by design. What we wanted, what Facebook wants, what Meta wants, is people with diverse perspectives at the table. Meta realizes that the customer base is very diverse in terms of age, in terms of background. And so the leadership team that's discussing what our strategies are needs to be diverse, needs to reflect that audience. And then in addition to the fact that the leadership team is so diverse by design, the agenda also intentionally invites external visitors that in the majority of the cases are very, very junior. So people who have been in the company 2 months, 6 months, they would come in and present a project, talk about things that work, that don't work. And this is the way that that horizontality of the organization is achieved. Now, why was the vertical organization useful for so long? Because if you think about 50 years ago, the leader was the one that had the greatest knowledge because he had been through the entire thing. He had gone up through the ranks and he knew best. So you wanted a vertical organization that was looking up to the leader and following what the person who knew the best had to say. And then you had at the junior levels the lowest knowledge because they hadn't had the experience, and knowledge was equivalent to experience. You had to have been there to know what to do. So you needed all these arms to execute orders made by the people who knew at the top. And also the hierarchy, these levels, which obviously has the cost of losing agility, you needed that to ensure control and minimize deviation, make sure people were aligned to the direction. And it was okay to lose that agility because the product life cycle is very long. It took a long time to go to market. It took a long time for things to change. So that organization was very, very useful. It made sense. Now, why is it obsolete? And I use that word purposely. That vertical organization is obsolete today. While the majority of the companies still use it, it is obsolete. It no longer works. Why not? Number one, the leader no longer has the greatest knowledge. Things have changed too often since the leader did the work in the lower levels. So having someone at the top that doesn't have the lower knowledge no longer works. The leader needs to be much closer to the ground, to the customer, to the people doing the work. So the leader needs to listen with humility, something that the leader didn't have to do. It was not valued. So we'll get to humility in a second. When you have the junior levels made up mainly of Generation Z, they have the highest knowledge, especially in the digital space, but in general, because they're the early adopters, they're the ones experimenting. So you need to turn things around and listen to Gen Z. And then the other thing that forces that vertical organization on its side is that the increasing speed of change and product life cycles and evolution requires much greater decision speed and greater autonomy at the bottom. So that's the reason why that organization is obsolete. Now, is there an obvious solution? No, because that the one on the right, the simplistic, straight horizontal, doesn't work because you can't have a leader with 50 direct reports because there's no management. There's lots of tests going on with pods, with autonomy, with clear rules that they can work within, but then they go out and they innovate and they execute within those guidelines and they don't need to come back. So there's a lot of very successful tests there, but really businesses are testing today. The point is, as I saw at Meta, there's a very clear awareness that vertical organization no longer works because of all these reasons I just said. So that's the building horizontal organization as the first insight. The second insight is to be part of the problem. I would say this is probably the most significant insight for any cultural transformation, for any digital transformation. And the reason is that the main enemy of change is our ego. That is the main enemy. It's not systems, it's not product, it's not competition. It's the human ego that is the biggest barrier to evolve and to change and to adjust and to adapt. So again, starting with some examples within Facebook. So Facebook has these culture posters all over the halls. I've seen it at a lot of companies. At most companies, it's not really the truth. It's an aspiration. It's what the company culture wants to aspire to. At Facebook, I experience them as being very indicative of how the culture works. So in that sense, it's helpful to share some of these. So there's one statement that is focus on impact. Don't focus on effort, on activity, focus on impact. What is it that will have the biggest impact? If that doesn't have impact, shift your energy to something else. That's very much putting focus on one's ability to affect the result. Another one is which starts getting into the psychology of being part of the problem and the cult and the ego. What would you do if you weren't afraid? This is in every single office. This is somewhere. So it has a nice invitation or challenge. Most things, if there was no fear, we would try a lot more things. So that's a challenge. Another one is done is better than perfect, is to fight the perfectionist we have in us. Again, it's the ego that's talking there. Done is better than perfect. Just move on. You need to try something, learn from what you did. If it worked, great. If it didn't work, learn. But if you don't do it and you're just sitting in a lab trying to perfect something, you're never going to do it and you're never going to learn. Don't mistake motion for progress. It's very, very similar to focus on impact. It's great. You could be moving all day long, running around. You could have a full agenda. If you're not driving progress, if you're not focusing on impact, it's the wrong motion. And then the one that's probably closest to this insight is nothing at Facebook is somebody else's problem. So this has to do with, okay, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. How can I contribute to solving the solution? And this is at the root of any digital transformation. Now, I'm going to ask you a question to imagine the last time you had an early morning meeting at an office, right? Because a lot of our meetings now are remote or on Zoom or on any other platform. But if you're going into the office, or remember back when you were going into the office and you had a meeting first thing in the morning and you walked in late, right? And somebody asked you, why are you late? Think back to the most common response you gave, or the most common response you heard from other people. Can you remember them? Is this one of the more frequent ones? Oh, traffic. I got stuck in traffic. Oh my God, traffic was crazy. We never say there is traffic every single morning and I simply didn't put my alarm clock with enough time to take into effect that traffic. Or I hit snooze too many times and therefore I found the traffic that is there every single morning and I couldn't overcome it. It's very interesting that we focus on what's outside of our control. We focus on traffic instead of saying traffic has always been there. It's always going to be there. Yet I did not adjust for traffic. The reason we do that is because we have a victim mental model incorporated in our way of being. It's the tendency when things get difficult to blame external factors. It's not my fault. It's not my fault that I set the alarm with insufficient time. It's traffic. It's their fault. Right? And now it's very important to recognize it comes from our childhood. It's better to be innocent and not be part of the problem. It feels safe, right? When our parents scolded us, we did something wrong. Oh, no, I didn't do it. So we would say, oh, the milk fell out of my hand. The milk decided to jump out of my hand. It's not that I wasn't responsible and I didn't have it well enough, or any one of you who has more than one child. This is an everyday occurrence. She started it. No, he started it, because in innocence, there's safety. And we have that in our bodies, in our bones. We need to be innocent so that we escape being scolded and being told we did something wrong. Now, the problem, it's okay as children, right? That works. That's the way children and parents work. The problem is when we bring this to our adult life and we're in a company and we're saying, marketing is blaming product because they don't have the right product for me to market, or sales is blaming marketing because they're so useless. They don't give me the right tools to sell. And here we are in a boat that has that has water coming in, and one area of the company is saying, oh, we're so lucky the hole is on their side, because we still have that victim mindset activated. And we're still evaluating whether we're innocent, and we feel warm inside because we're innocent and someone else's fault it is. Now, if this boat is a company, you can imagine how ridiculous that is. If instead of thinking about, oh, I'm innocent, it's their fault, if we all thought about we're literally in the same boat, how can we help them? Then that company starts winning in the marketplace, because everyone is shifting from the victim mindset. What is the opposite of the victim mindset? It's the protagonist mindset. And that mental model is the one that says, when things get challenging, I focus on my ability to respond and on my available choices. That's all I focus on. I don't focus on whose fault it is. I don't focus on looking for ways to demonstrate that I'm innocent, because that's a victim mindset. I focus on what's my best response in this situation. What's my best response in this situation? That is the question that the protagonist mindset asks him or herself. And I'll give you two examples of this. One is personal and one is business. On the personal side, the victim statement that we tell ourselves, and this is inside our head, is, oh, I don't have time to go to the gym. That's why I don't take care of my body. That's why I don't do exercise. The protagonist phrase is the story. We change the story first, is I can choose to prioritize my time to better reflect the life that I want. So all of a sudden, there's opportunity there. The victim mindset closes opportunity. I don't have time, period. There's traffic, period. I'm always going to be late. The protagonist mindset opens opportunity. I can choose to prioritize. So maybe what that invites me is to say, if I want to prioritize my morning so that I stop at the gym, maybe I have a conversation with my boss and say, hey, can I send somebody from my team to join your meeting because it's really important for me to go to the gym? Oh, no, I can't do that. Well, okay, maybe the afternoon I can do that. Maybe I can stop at lunch. I don't know what the answer is. The point is, changing the story from a victim story to a protagonist story opens up opportunities. All of a sudden, I see doors that I can try to knock down. And I go back to the business example I shared before. Oh, marketing is useless. They never understand what they need to do. If I make myself part of the problem and shift from the victim mindset of blaming someone else and feeling safe and innocent, if I say, how can I contribute? Then I can say, I have not yet been able to convey their importance to us. All of a sudden, I am part of the problem. It doesn't matter who's to blame. What's to matter is that the victim statement stops opportunity. We're done. As long as marketing is the way they are, nothing is ever going to improve. Or I can say, what else can I do about it? I have not been able to convey. What else do I do? How else do I influence them? Maybe do I find someone else to help me? Do I bring them along with me on a customer call? All of a sudden, it opens up opportunities. That's the B part of the problem. I would say the most central reason why digital transformations efforts fail. Because you have, I'll go back to the monopoly example. You have an ex-monopoly that was successful for so long. And if they stay in a victim mindset, if they stay saying, oh my God, the market changed on us and customers don't come to us anymore, they're going to the competition. Oh, poor me. It's, everything worked so well and now everything changed on us. That's it. You're going down. You're going down with those changes because those changes are inevitable. They're increasingly inevitable because changes are getting faster. So if you don't shift that, in that monopoly extreme example, if you don't shift the victim mindset that is ingrained in the DNA because they have been successful for so long and now the rules have changed, if you don't shift that from a victim to a protagonist, to start asking different questions, to start asking the questions, what can we do different based on this new set of conditions? Conditions have changed. What is my best response to the new set of conditions? That is the single strongest insight for any transformation, including digital transformation. Let's go to the third one, which is have a hard conversation. Sheryl Sandberg, many of you may recognize her. She was the COO of Facebook for a very long time, quite often credited with the successful business that Facebook became. Mark Zuckerberg had the brilliant idea. Sheryl had the business savvy to turn it into an outstanding business. The fastest company in history to reach 1 trillion market cap. A lot of people credit Sheryl for that. And she starts every single meeting with this question. How many of you have had a hard conversation this week? Right? In the regional directors meetings, and half the room would stand up and half the room would stay seated. And she would say, okay, those of you who are staying seated because you have not had a hard conversation, think of one that you need to have and schedule it for next week. And then she would say, those of you standing, how many of you have had a hard conversation today? And maybe 2/3 would sit down and, 10 people would remain standing, very proud that they've had a hard conversation today. She would tell those that sat down, she would say, it's not enough to have a hard conversation weekly. You need to have them on a daily basis. Why? Because there are hard conversations everywhere. There are things to solve everywhere. And if we don't solve them, then we're in trouble. And if we don't have them every day, then we don't normalize them. Then we're waiting for the annual performance evaluation. We're waiting for, I don't know, the monthly product review meeting. We're waiting for things. And in the meantime, those problems are not getting solved. So that's why, think about it. Sheryl Sandberg, that is the question she asks everyone in every single meeting. And why is that? Because sustainable success is another great framework from Excellent, is achieved along 3 dimensions. If you analyze any company that has had sustainable success for 10, 20, 50, 100 years, they have done it because they have consistently driven success in 3 dimensions. One is the IT level, business results. They achieve business results. If you don't, you go out of business, somebody buys you out. You need to deliver that. The we level is the trust, the collaboration, the respect. Do people feel like they are in a community where they belong and where they have support? Because we're tribal beings and we need that. So companies that don't take care of that, eventually people leave. And then the third level is the I level. And it's increasingly more important with Generation Z, where they say, look, if the company is not aligned with my personal values, this is not a place I want to be in. So those 3 need to exist for the company to be successful in the long term. And if you think about hard conversations, they're critical for each of the 3 elements. For business results, if we don't solve the hard issues, our competitors will, and they will beat us in the market. So we better be solving them quickly. On the we level, if we don't talk about things, we don't have respectful, strong relationships, because that is how you build them. It's like a personal relationship. It's like a couple. It's like friendship. If we don't talk about the important things, I don't respect you if we're not talking about the important things. So that is how you build collaboration, trust, respect, is by talking about easy things, difficult things, talking about everything that we need to talk about. And then obviously the internal values alignment. If I'm going home every day and the big issues, nobody talks about them because everyone's in denial, that's not a place I want to be in. That's not a place I feel like I can grow. Now, the challenge is, again, ourselves. It's what we have in our minds, because we're in a meeting. Has this ever happened to you, that you're in a meeting, someone says something and you think, this is such a stupid idea. That's not going to work. That's what we think in our head. But then what we say in the meeting is we say, interesting idea. Now think about that separation between what we think and what we say. And in that separation is a big problem, because it's the quadrilemma. It's not a dilemma. It's a quadrilemma. Because first of all, we can't avoid our thoughts, right? That thought of, oh my God, that's such a stupid idea, it just appears because it's made up of all our experiences, all our biases, our, many of them unconscious bias. It just appears. So it's not, there's not a viable solution to just clamp them down and not think them anymore. They will just appear. Number 2, if we voice them literally, if we say, oh my God, that's such a stupid idea, not only do we hurt people, but we'll also feel bad. And by the way, it's not effective, because all of a sudden everyone's defenses just go up, and there's no way to, it's not a constructive way to voice a disagreement. If we don't say them, or if we just say, oh, that's really interesting, first of all, we're not addressing the problem, right? We think that's a stupid idea and we're kind of letting it live on. We also hurt the relationship because we're being fake, right? And it's really difficult to build a relationship when we're being fake. And at the same time, the other person feels that we're not really being genuine, right? When we say, oh, that's interesting, the other person feels it. There's really no way out of it, right? So you can't say it, you can't fake it, you can't clamp it down. That's the quadrilemma. And this is at the root of all the issues in the company, because those are problems that we need to talk about and we need to solve. But we need to first overcome this internal quadrilemma of how do we solve it. And the way we solve it, in kind of, this is obviously simplistic kind of framework to think about it, and then you need to work on it on a case by case basis. But the way you solve it is with constructive, authentic communication. So if you think about, we have kind of 3 layers in the way we communicate. You could break it down. There's a cosmetic layer, which is, oh, that's an interesting idea, which is cosmetic. It's not useful. It's not truthful. There's a reactive layer, which is the ego talking. It's, I'm right and you're wrong. That's a stupid idea, and it's not constructive. It's not effective to say it out front. And then there's the core truth. And this is, I hear you. I understand why you said what you said based on, your experience or whatever, or maybe I can find out more. But then I share my point of view. I have a different point of view. Now, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're stupid, right? That's the reactive energy speaking. It just means I have a different point of view. And we're lucky in this company that we have people with different points of view. That's called cognitive diversity. Great. Let's talk about the different points of view. So that is the root of how to get through the quadrilemma. And the fundamental insight is you need to have a hard conversation. You have to have them because that is how organizations progress. And then there's tools to have them because we need to overcome our internal ego and our internal inability to be able to have that hard conversation in a constructive way. The fourth insight is hold your convictions lightly, which actually has a lot to do with how to have that hard conversation. It has to do with, I believe my point of view is the only correct one. Well, that's a problem. That's problematic. So the fourth insight is hold your convictions lightly. The example I want to share from Facebook is there's an embedded DNA trait to stay humble. And there's a symbolic way that Facebook does that. When you go to Menlo Park, to One Hacker Way, which is the headquarters, the largest building, there's lots of buildings around, but that's the main one. You'll see a big sign with the thumbs up, says Facebook. Now it says Meta. I think actually instead of the thumbs up, now there's the Meta symbol, which is like an infinity symbol. But then when you go around the back of this sign, you will see a sign that says Sun Microsystems. And that is the sign that used to be in that same place, obviously, inverted the other way around, when Sun Microsystems had that office space. So this was the Sun Microsystems headquarters back in the 80s, I think 70s and 80s. And Facebook bought the office space when Sun Microsystems went out of business. So this is a symbolic way that Facebook had to say, look, stay humble, because Sun Microsystems was the best company in their space, in their technological space at one point. They didn't adapt fast enough. They didn't respond to changing market needs and customer needs fast enough. They went out of business. They no longer exist as a company. So let's keep this back here as a reminder to us that we need to stay humble. It's not, you will not have your success every day guaranteed. You need to stay humble and to stay aware and to stay respondent to what's happening. Why is humility vital? We talked about one thing, which is that flat organization requires humility at the top. The leader is no longer the one that knows the best. That takes a lot of humility and a lot of emotional courage to say, look, I no longer am the one who knows the best. I need to be humble and to ask questions and to be open to different points of view, because I no longer have all the answers as I used to in the organizational model of 50 years ago. Also, Maxine Williams is a chief diversity officer at Meta. She says the team with the cognitive diversity delivers better results. This is scientifically proven already. Why? Because different points of view from different backgrounds, different experiences, obviously not just gender, but race and experiences and education bring us more points of view. If we have more points of view, we have a higher probability of reaching a better response. The problem with cognitive diversity, again, is the ego, is if we have a bunch of different perspectives fighting it out, wanting to be right, then we're going to kill the theory of cognitive diversity. We need humility around the table for cognitive diversity to be able to have its positive theoretical effect, right? So what's the problem with the ego is that we have a knower mental model embedded in our DNA, in the way we think, and it has to do with our, with anthropology. It has to do with how our reptilian brain is set up to think that what we see is reality. So what we end up doing is we think I am perfectly rational and others are not, right? So that already starts falling apart. It doesn't make sense. It mathematically, it cannot be right that I am objectively rational and others are not. Because what's happening actually is that we don't see things as they are objectively. We see things as we are, because we have these glasses, these lenses loaded with unconscious bias based on our experiences, on our upbringing, on what our living experiences, what worked well, what didn't work well. And now we see everything as we have experienced it. And we believe that our perception, our subjective experience of life is the objective truth. And that is that we're already in trouble there. Because if you get 10 people around the table and you ask them the same question, you're probably going to get 10 different answers or 8 different answers with a little bit of overlap. Why? Because everyone has a different subjectivity and different perspective. And so if we go to that conversation with our knower mindset, thinking that our opinion is objectively right, we're in trouble because we're gonna miss the opportunity to see something that is better than my limited subjective experience. Now, if we go, again, it's a spectrum, right? The same way the victim protagonist is a spectrum, the knower learner is a spectrum. And the learner on the opposite extreme, all the learner says is, my perspective is limited. It doesn't say it's worthless. It doesn't say, the learner doesn't say, I'm just going to shut up and follow along with what others say. That's absolutely not the learner mental model. The learner mental model is, look, my experience is valuable. That's why the company pays me a salary. That's why I'm doing this piece of work. But my perspective is limited. So I'm going to bring my perspective to the table. I'm going to argue why I think that is the right way to go. But then I'm going to hold that conviction lightly. I'm going to recognize that my perspective is limited to what I have lived, to what my experience has been. So I'm going to offer it up, and then I'm going to hold it lightly and listen to other perspectives. And I'm going to prioritize the progress of the team versus my ego of being right. And think about, again, go back to that iceberg framework, that analogy, and think about the leverage of this mental model. Think about a company that has, companies that I work with now. I'm consulting with large companies and large leadership teams. Think about a company with 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people. Think about the leverage power of 5,000 people shifting the way they have conversations just a little bit. They don't need to become other people, but if they shift their conversations a little bit from victim to protagonist, so they ask themselves, what can I do to contribute to the solution? They shift a little bit from knower to learner. They come to the conversation saying, look, here's my perspective, but it's limited. So tell me yours. Think about the leverage power of how those conversations go and how problems get solved in those companies. A great golden rule for the learner is don't get mad, get curious. If something gets you mad, if something frustrates you, if something rubs you the wrong way, that is a great invitation to get curious, because it means that there's a different perspective there. Someone sees something very differently than you do. Get curious. Ask them why. How did you get to that conclusion? I have a completely different perspective. Tell me more. And it does two things. One is it allows you to learn something new. Two, it drops defense barriers on the other side. Because if we go ego to ego and I'm right and you're wrong, then all we're doing is we're activating defense mechanisms and we're not going to get anywhere. The minute we get curious, the defense barriers drop, and that person feels your interest, feels your humility and your curiosity. They will much more likely be curious to your perspective as well. So this is an outstanding golden rule for the learner mindset. Think about the Beatles when they started going out. They went to this record producer, Decca Records, and they said they listened to their music and they say, "Oh, we don't like their sound. Guitar groups are on their way out." Right? It's a kind of a humoristic analogy of the knower mindset, saying, forget about it. We don't want to hear a different perspective. We don't want to be open to the thousands of fans that are cheering for this new band that we don't quite understand. We're just going to stay in our knower perspective, and my opinion is right. And this great phrase by Eric Hoffer: in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned, the knowers, find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. That is it. That's the crutch of today is the slowest day of the rest of our lives. If we're not able to learn, to adapt, to be humble, to hold our convictions lightly, we will go down with the world that is no longer existing. So that is holding your convictions lightly. Last insight, believe in something. At Facebook, there's a few culture posters that connect with this. This is very much embedded. Build social value. Facebook was born from an idea of connecting, building community, giving people the opportunity to connect with others, to speak, to be heard. Think about social networks in general, not just Facebook, but social networks in general. They've really given the power to the individual. They've given the power to the small person who disagreed with the company, with maybe a tyrant or an oppressive government, and they've come out in social networks to speak out against governments. Governments have fallen because of this democratization of this power shift to the individual that technology in general and social networks in particular have given to them. And in the business world, same thing. It used to be that only large companies with large marketing budgets and large factories could compete and advertise. Now, an individual in their home with a phone and with a good idea, they can advertise on Instagram ads and on TikTok and reach literally thousands and millions of people with very limited budget. All it requires is a good idea. So all of a sudden, that shift of power from only the large with the power to the small with the good ideas has all to do with this philosophical value that Facebook has in its DNA. Ship love is another culture poster. Give more than you take. This idea of there's a lot of humility in that. There's a lot of wanting to contribute. And then this idea that is really at the essence of any network is eventually everything connects. So these are just some examples of how Facebook has this insight embedded in the DNA. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard about Simon Sinek. He has a great talk on a great TED talk called Start With Why. And he says, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. So this is a psychological insight. It's people connect with purpose. People connect with the reason why you're doing something. And one of the greatest examples of this is Yvon Chouinard, the founder and CEO of Patagonia. He says, when I ask our employees what business we're in, and they say clothing, right? It's one of the most successful clothing companies in the world. He says, no, we're not in the clothing business. We're in the business of saving the planet. Clothing is just the way we're helping to do that. That's purpose. That's why. That's starting with why. And so you need to believe in something, because not only because that's how human beings work, but because Gen Z is now the largest generation in terms of people, largest generation in terms of purchasing power, and they work to live rather than live to work, which was the case of our parents and our grandparents. 56% of Gen Z would quit a job that prevented them from enjoying their lives. So you better make sure that they are enjoying what they're doing. And 40% would rather be unemployed than unhappy in a job. And if you think about it, the older generations, that drops to 25%, right? No, I need a paycheck. But the younger people will say, no, I'd rather be unemployed. And why is that? Because values alignment is central. As an employee, a Gen Z, 77% of Gen Zs find it important to work at organizations with the same values as theirs. And as consumers, 89% of Gen Zs choose to buy brands that are socially and environmentally conscious. So think about it. It's not only human nature to connect to why, right? This is the Simon Sinek Start With Why, but it's only becoming more so as Generation Z is much more connected with this way of thinking. So these are the 5 insights. Build a horizontal organization. The vertical no longer works. Be part of the problem. Be a protagonist. Ask yourself, what's your best response to the situation? Have a hard conversation, because if you don't have them, somebody else is having them and you're not solving the issues. Hold your convictions lightly, because your opinion is not objectively the right one. It's only one. Bring it to the table and believe in something, because increasingly that will be more important than what you do. The way I help organizations along this cultural journey, I'm going to oversimplify it here, and obviously each organization is in a different place. There's really 2 virtuous mindsets. I talked about those 2 here, the protagonist mindset versus the victim, and the learner mindset versus the knower. And then there's 2 blocks of effective collaboration. One is authentic communication. You need to have the hard conversations. And one that I didn't talk much about, but it's very much tactical and very much in the weeds of any organization, is impeccable coordination. Where a lot of these things fall apart is it's not clear who does what. It's people don't come back and apologize when they didn't hold their commitment. There's loose accountability. There's unclear commitment, and so a good idea falls apart because it's not being executed correctly. So any mix of these 4 is at the heart of any cultural journey transformation project like the ones that I'm helping leaders do today. So that is what I had for you today. I think we have some time for Q&A. Any follow-up you'd like, I'm on LinkedIn. This is my email, and very happy to take any questions that you may have at exactly 45 minutes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Joao. So, of course, people remember, go across to the Q&A section to drop your questions there, and I'll relay them across. Yeah, great talk there. I really love the kind of like breakdown. I think it's a very hard kind of approach for people to take, a mindset, right? It's definitely something that you aren't necessarily taught growing up. One of my first thoughts kind of going into this, like, it was quite a scary way you opened up, right? Today is the fastest day you've had so far, but also the slowest day you'll experience in the future. That's deep and scary. And that kind of accelerates this need for improvement and assistance, right? It puts a stress, kind of a looming fear on a lot of people. I guess, like, how do you overcome that? Do you think it's more mindset than anything else?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll answer it two ways. One a bit more philosophical and one more practical. The philosophical part is there's a lot of kind of Eastern philosophies, and a lot of philosophies in general have this thing in common, which is radical acceptance, right? Everything starts with radical acceptance. Acceptance, what is accepted. Most of modern humanity suffering has to do with resisting what is. Oh, that I had an expectation that it would be something else. It's not. I'm disappointed now, and I just get stuck in that, right? So the philosophical part of the answer is, radical acceptance. It is only getting faster. Humanity is getting faster. Change is getting faster. Technology is getting faster. So take a deep breath. Accept it. That is the way it is. We're not going back to the slow days of a century ago. It's just not going to happen. Radical acceptance. And then I'll shift to the more practical part of the answer, which is, it has a lot to do with everything I just talked about, which is, you need to hold your convictions lightly. You need to say, look, I no longer have all the answers, and that is okay. That is a great opportunity to learn. If I'm stuck to, I need to have all the answers, because that is a bit what we were taught in school and in our careers. You need to be the one with the right answers. Then I'm just not going to succeed. So I need to learn humility. I need to let go. I need to hold my convictions lightly. And then I need to shift to, I go back. Once you see the world through these mindsets, they just show up everywhere. I go back to my mental model of victim protagonist, is put the light on, put the self-awareness on the fact that if I'm just, kind of paralyzed with, as you said, because I connect with that. I felt that same fear of, oh my God, what do I do now? Okay, put the self-awareness on. I'm not going to do anything about it if I stay in victim mode, because yes, victim is embedded. It's programmed in me since I was very young. It's programmed to feel like a victim, and oh my God, things are accelerating, and oh, what's going to happen? Shift that to, what is my best response in this situation? And then it's baby steps. What's my best situation in my job? Is there something that I'm not being able to adjust well enough? What's my best response? Do I look for help? Do I ask for someone that I think is doing better than I am? Am I humble, and do I go ask for their opinion? You never know what the right answer is, but asking that question opens up an opportunity for new responses.
I think that's definitely an interesting way to approach it, right? Is like there's that ego that you have to remove from it, right? Like, it's almost like, especially, there's almost an overwhelming pressure. Like, we always hear that thing, like, all this knowledge is at your fingertips nowadays, right? And it puts a kind of pressure on people to feel like they expected to know the answers, when realistically, like, the better thing that people want to hear is, I don't know the answer, but I know how to find the answer, right? And that's really how you kind of find the winners. And on the first kind of part of the answer you gave, it reminded me of that classic where everyone just says, it is what it is. But, like, no one really leans into what that philosophical saying means, right? It's almost just become a coined phrase with no true substance to it.
Yeah, and on that point, because there's a common misunderstanding of acceptance, and I had it in a team coaching session very recently, where someone said, "Oh, so I should just accept everything, and everything's a disaster, and that's the way it is, and I should just roll with it." Okay, I understand that interpretation, but it's actually a two-part strategy. First is radical acceptance, because if you get stuck in rejecting what is, then you can't move past that because you're stuck. And then once you accept it, then move into action mode. What's my best response? Who do I ask for help? Who knows about this that I can go to? So that's action. It's very action oriented, but you can't get there. It's very difficult to get there without first accepting what is.
We've got some questions come through. One from Natalia, I think is a great one to hop into. Is she's wondering what your thoughts are about core knowledge is needed for marketing in the near future. So she's making that comparison between your classic studies of digital marketing, SEO, more like a refined, directed educational approach, versus the opportunities, the new opportunities, the way you approach them, right? Like, do you see it being more of a, I guess that what she's getting at is, do you see people being required to have more of a fixed, targeted skill set, or do you think the future is actually more in those people that are able to flex themselves to all these different situations? Because we are in a, as you said, a drastically faster and faster each day passing, changing world.
Is this? Let me clarify the question. Is the context of the question from a personal career standpoint? So where should I focus my personal career and my investment in knowledge, or did I misunderstand?
She has an example, so I'll use the example here as well. So she says, if there's a gap between jobs for 2 years and then the experience is not relevant anymore, like what do you do there, right? It's that kind of feeling that you have your classic feelings of learn SEO, learn digital marketing, but these things change.
Yeah, understood.
Do you think it's more important to keep up with that, or do you think it's more important to actually just present yourself as this evolving person?
Yeah, I get that, and it's a great question, because I think there's a good tension in subject matter expertise, right? If you want to do SEO right, then you look for an SEO expert, and there's value. There's an argument to be an expert in a specific field, and then obviously there's the argument for the flexibility and the constant learning, et cetera. So I understand the question. I infer the question comes from that dilemma. Now, I want to share something that in one of those Q&As that I shared that Mark Zuckerberg does, someone asked, what do you look for when you're hiring someone? What are the top 3 things you look for when you hire someone? And he said, the top 3 things are the same thing, our ability to learn. Mm-hmm. The top 3 things are ability to learn. That is what I look for. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. So I think that answers the questions from his perspective. And so I think it's good when you choose a field. I think it's good to become as much of a subject matter expert as possible, because a company will be comparing you with others who have become very very deep in that subject matter. But I think as a mantra, as a way of approaching it, I think you need to remain a constant learner. I think you need to be looking always, and this of course connects with the humility and the protagonist. It connects with the learner and the protagonist directly. It's remain a learner your entire career. Always look at, okay, what's next, and become a protagonist and say, okay, which of these do I want to pick? Which of these do I want to select? Which of these do I want to invest time on? And the answer is going to be yours. It's going to be personal, but invest in remaining a learner all the time.
Yeah, I think, like, to kind of lean in more of what kind of Mark pushes. I used it in the last session. I always remember the quote. I believe it was the half-life of a good programmer is about 6 to 8 years. And what he's saying there is, by then you've built up bad habits. So to your point, the counter argument that he was always trying to give over is this evolution, this ability to pick up new, this ability to not remain pig-headed and be willing to change, especially with, as you opened this up with, every day is getting faster.
Yeah, and one more double click on that is you could do it. Let's illustrate 2 ways of doing it. You can do it kind of more macro, and macro. Mark Zuckerberg is a good example of that. He picks one thing to do every year. So one year he learned Mandarin. The other year he chose to learn I don't know how many new programming languages. Like he had like a big macro learning with this insight of I need to stay agile in learning. Some people say I'm gonna allocate 2 hours a week to learning new things, to online courses, to connecting to something that I know nothing about. So whatever way, more macro or more micro, there's a deliberate decision, an intentional decision to say the future is about ability to continuously learn. So how do I do that? How do I deliberately allocate time to do that?
Now, I think that's a fair point. That what you're getting at is there's a flexibility required, right? I think a lot of people hear these type of things. They hear, for example, Muck's example, and they're like, "Well, I can't do that." It's like, well, you don't need to, right? You're already looking for a reason to discredit and discard, as opposed to saying, "Okay, how would this apply to me?" There's your example of allocate 2 hours a week. Take an approach that fits you. We see this in many different things. Like the classic ones, always, I'm feeling a bit chubby. So you hit the gym once and you don't see, like, I can't do this every day. It's like, well, hold on, cowboy. If you just do like 10, 20 minutes every day, right, instead of trying to do the 2 hour and break your body, that might be more suited to you than what you're seeing these bodybuilders do. So I agree with that point. And leading into one of the questions, Gok is asking about the idea of the horizontal structure. How do you really apply that to big corporations that have a high level hierarchy? And I think like one little extension I'll put on there is, even if you get that horizontal organization, one thing I was thinking about when you said that is Valve came to mind for me. Valve is an amazingly talented company, but they have that horizontal structure. No one's a boss. Even Gabe Newell is on that level. But is there not a worry that there's hidden power dynamics there, right? Like at the end of the day, you still know that person is the boss, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I do not think anyone has gotten it right yet. I do not think, I have not seen it. I have not seen the example of, okay, here is the new organizational structure. My main point is the vertical one is obsolete. It no longer works. And in the absence of that improved model, I would say 90% of companies are still going through that vertical, obsolete structure, because that's what they know, that's what they grew up in, and now the CEOs grew up that way, so they continue to operate that way, and they're comfortable. Although, theoretically, objectively, that no longer works. Now, one part, I'll answer in two parts. One part is the actual structure, and that's where I say no one has proven yet how to get that right, because as you say, hidden power dynamics show up. We still need someone to make a final decision. So who does? You have kind of these behind the scenes power structures going on. Some, as I mentioned briefly, some play with pod structures where it's not so much horizontal, which leads into those kinds of issues. It's more around autonomy, limited autonomy. So you 10 people go out and solve this issue within these boundaries and come back and tell us what you did. So it gives autonomy, gives it delegates without resisting. But that also presents all sorts of issues. The other part of the answer is, so the first part of the answer is structure. It's not yet answered. Lots of companies are playing with it and playing with the pros and cons. The other part of it is within the existing structure. It's actually, I shared a couple of examples. Within the existing structure is create incentives for those hierarchies to be less distant. So the one example is Mark Zuckerberg asking the person who joined a month ago, what are you struggling with? What do you like? What do you not like? And, maybe the person that's been there a month asks them about strategy and chat GPT, or maybe they ask about, the benefits are getting a bit weaker. And I guarantee you, he's had to answer that kind of question as well. But it's important for him because he's flattening the structure in a conversational sense. He's creating psychological safety for that distance to flatten. And then the example I gave around the leadership team. The leadership team is by design constructed of people with 20 years experience and people with 3 years experience. And that conversation will be flatter because we're not going to have 5 levels to hear what that new person has to say. We're going to hear it at that table. And then we're going to invite junior people. So those are the two ways is play with different structures and being cognizant of the pros and cons of each one. And then within the existing structure, without changing structure, you can already implement a lot of these mechanics to bring in younger voices, and to create the safety for them to speak up, which in a lot of these large organizations is what's at the root of it. More than the organization structure, it's the lack of psychological safety, and people just shut up because they won't be heard.
What I'm hearing there is elasticity, right? It's kind of like, to use that kind of vertical structure, it's almost like if you compared old political structures, it's the monarchy versus the republic is what you're kind of emphasizing. Obviously, we're not going to change, we're not going to take Mark's place away every 4 years and rotate like that. But it's that logic that you are temporarily going to put people in a position of power or recognition within those structures to evolve the ideas is what you're getting to. And I think, one thing that comes to mind with that is, as you were talking, especially when you got into, I believe it's the fourth point, I was thinking about this whole idea where you want everyone to buy into the idea, you want everyone to be on the same ship. There is a worry that that individuality starts to disappear as people convert to the culture, right? Do you think that bringing in regular new blood, rotating new employees in, is a crucial part to maintain the evolution in that system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's and culture is so strong. I go back to culture, eat strategy for breakfast. Culture is so strong that new people, it's really hard for new people to change culture. Usually new people come in and they read the symbols and the processes really quickly, really effectively, because our brains are very efficient. And they read, okay, what is the way to get along here? What is the way to do well here? What is the way to get promoted? They read the symbols. Okay, who's gotten promoted? How do they act? Or how do they? So culture is really efficient at bringing people in and making them adapt quickly. So that's on one side. But on the other side, in terms of ideas, in terms of humility, in terms of learning, they are crucial to come in and to bring in new ways of seeing things and challenging the way things are done. And again, that requires, I go back to the mindsets, that requires that the culture has already embraced a learner mindset, has already embraced an attitude of bringing in the new, maybe young person and say, look, we're going to hold our convictions lightly because we hired you because you have a different way of thinking. So, they go hand in hand. How do we evolve the culture to be more humble and open and holding convictions lightly? And how do we inject some of that new thinking and create a safe psychological space for them to speak up and incent them to speak up? It's that kind of virtuous circle that you want to create.
Yeah, because there's always that panic of like, you hear someone say, well, you just aren't a cultural fit for us. And then I guess you're talking about like, there's got to be that give and take where, obviously there is a culture of the company, but then you've got to every once in a while question, why is our culture this way? Is there something being said by a new party that can actually benefit us to take us a step further? I think we're going over a little bit. Obviously, it's not too much of a worry because there's lunch, but I think people want to get to. So I think I'll round out with one final question, which related to your final point, and it's that idea of people investing in an idea, right, in a belief that people want something bigger, something clear to believe in, rather than just make money or whatever. I feel like there's been examples in the past of companies that either lose sight or faked it from the get-go. Do you think it's feasible for companies to get away with that? Or do you think that the consumer as well as the worker has become very aware of when these statements and these beliefs aren't true, right? Like they can see through quicker than they used to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very hard evidence that the younger the consumer, the more they see through it, and the less you can fool. I mean, I shared a couple of data points, but it's tremendous the amount of science there is out there and evidence. Now, it's like a normal distribution, though. I think maybe 50 years ago, I'm going to invent numbers just to illustrate the point. Maybe 50 years ago, 80% of companies got away with it, right? Because it was all about power. It was all about, how whoever has the biggest marketing budget, the biggest factories were the ones communicating. They're in your face. So, 80% of them were successful despite not really walking the talk or despite not really having a clear purpose behind what they were doing, because there were other levers at play, which was the power play. Today, it's probably inverse. It's probably 20% get away with it and 80% don't. And the 80% that don't has to do with consumers are getting younger, they're seeing through it. Employees also don't stick around if they see those, if things are incongruent. So that's the reason 80% don't get away with it. But there's probably still 20 that do, either because for whatever other lever, right? Maybe they have a market that they've contained for a long time, or they've kept competition out for whatever reason, and so it allows them to get away with it more. Now, is it a good strategy? Increasingly less so, because to have a disalignment or to have a weak kind of purpose and a why behind it, increasingly less so. That's the point. So can you get away with it? Yeah. Is it harder to get away with it every day? Yes, as well. So that's why it makes more sense, especially for those starting a new company. It makes more sense to start there. Start with, why are we doing this? Why do we exist? What is the purpose? Because everything else aligns behind that. And your employees and your customers will be more attracted to what it is you're saying.
I think it's that idea that the legacy brands really lead that kind of potentially faking it and still existing. They built up what I call the brownie points, right? What you're really targeting is this idea that newer companies, especially in a drastically faster evolving system than it was 20 years ago, they will simply not get away with it. They'll get spotted out very quick. So, instead of being like, I'm here to save all the kittens in the world, if you really actually hate cats, don't keep that as your message for the company. Be true, because as you said, people sniff it out. And I think the lifetime of an individual product or service is drastically lower than it was just 20 years ago or 30 years ago, right? If you think about the brands that had dominance for 50 plus years, it's very rare that happens anymore.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that will do it, though, Joao. You've been an absolute pleasure to talk to. I'm just going to pull these details up on screen in case people have any other questions they want to ask you and get in contact with you. Feel free to do it. He seems like a very social lad. I'm sure he's willing to hear from you all. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to let you get to the lunch break, get some food in you. I'm sure you're going to be watching the rest of the talks, and we'll hopefully catch up again very soon.
Great. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, folks, so now we head to the lunch break. I'm sure most of you are already actually munching into a sandwich. I've kept production myself from being able to do so, and I've kept Joao from being able to do so, but hopefully we'll be able to get a bit of food now that he's off camera. If you haven't, go do it. We're going to be having a break. We should return at 12:40 for our next talk here on stage one, so hopefully we'll see you then.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got. Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and I am illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, buddy, I'm just a human. Oh.